All right, don't go crazy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for that lovely music and for the reading, Kevin, and for all you do, Jeff. So good to see you here this morning. And yeah, we're talking about the theme for May, new month, is divine doubt. And yeah, that does seem a little odd, but you know, this magazine that a lot of us subscribe to, that's the theme for this month in here. So we decided to go with it, and for this morning, I'm talking about self-doubt. Self-doubt as the starting block. And so we're talking about, this is the way I look at divine doubt. I believe that there's one power in the universe that created everything and everyone, everything and everyone, that's all there is, one power. And I believe that power is within each of us. So we all have that power within us. And so what I think is when there's that little small, still voice that kind of knocks at the door once in a while and says, you know, I know you've been pounding the table on this, that this is what you believe and this is the truth and you're right and everybody's wrong, but you want to think about that a little bit? There's that still small voice that sometimes gives us a little push. And the idea about when we have these doubts is not just to push them away and say, no, I'm right, this is what I've always believed, this is what I believe, sticking with this. Instead of that, you know, perhaps we should explore, question, and learn from some of these doubts that we have. So can we be honest with ourselves? When I started looking at this stuff, the first thing I thought of is the major doubt that I had in my life early on was when I was in my teens, because I had been going to confirmation class in a very fundamentalist church that was very sure that we had the true way, and we were not encouraged to doubt or to question. We were just take that on faith and don't ask questions. That was the mode. And some of you who are smiling have been there. You know where how that works. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But the idea is that what we don't want to do when we have these nigglings inside, this still small voice knocking saying, yeah, you're really sure about that? We don't want to just bury that. We want to look at it. And it reminds me of this story that was an allegory from Plato. And he had this, and I'm sure some of you have heard about this. He's got this story that there's a cave, and in the cave there's a bunch of prisoners, and they're chained in this cave. And they're not facing the door of the cave, they're facing the back of the cave. And behind them there's a fire, so they can see some shadows. That's their life. That's their life, looking at those shadows, and they think this is what the world is all about. Well, one guy one day escapes. He gets out of the cave. He goes outside. He's like, whoa, oh, this is unbelievable. The blue sky, the trees, the breeze, the water. Oh, he was just awestruck. And he thought, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell these prisoners, I'm going to release them, and we're all going to enjoy reality. This is the real life. They think the real life is looking at these shadows on the wall. So he goes back in and he tells them, you just aren't going to believe what I just experienced. It's just glorious. This real world out there is fabulous. But they were so afraid of the change that would cause in their life, they killed him. And they stayed right where they were, in that cave. And it's a good allegory about how we might look at our doubts, and we might not want to change anything up. If I change this, if I tell my parents, you know, that stuff I learned in catechism, I'm not buying that 100% anymore. What would happen to my relationship with my parents? I mean, that's a biggie, biggie. Or my spouse, or my kids, or, certainly the people that I was sitting in the pews with. So sometimes these looking at these doubts can be very scary. When I read about this doubt stuff, I remembered a friend of mine way back when. I mean, we were in our late 20s, I think, and she came from a Methodist background. And I remember her telling me, yeah, we were always encouraged to say what we were concerned about, to express our doubts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we were not. That was not something that happened where I went to church. But she said, no, we were told that if we had doubts, we should explore, we should ask questions. And the idea then is you're seeking truth. And that would really give you a better foundation for faith in the long run. I'm going to just repeat the quote that Kevin read from Ernest Holmes, that last paragraph. When doubt puts faith to the test, we can see it as an opportunity for deep devotion, for immersing, grounding, and centering ourselves in faith, for creating an inner openness for love, peace, and serenity to flow, leaving no room for doubt. So we want to examine the doubt, but then, let's not get burdened by it. And I want to do a little pitch for this magazine, as long as I've got it right here. If you don't subscribe to this, this was my religion for a long time. I really found solace in this, and I still do. This is part of my morning reading. There's a daily reading in there. There's very good articles, and I highly recommend it. We usually have some old copies up there. You can grab one and find out where you can call to subscribe or write to subscribe, however you do. But I just really think it's a fabulous magazine. So do we have anything up here today? Okay. So there's three things that I'm going to focus on today. One of them is self-doubt is as natural as hunger. We're going to have self-doubt. We don't have to be ashamed of it. It's just like hunger. And it's good, because when we get hungry, that's when we eat. And we need to eat. We need to have nourishment. And that's the same for doubt. If we're having a doubt, it means it's waking us up to something. And so we don't want to look at it as a flaw, but as something to look at, to question, reflect, reassess. We do not want to bury this, because it's an opportunity to grow, opportunity to have a better life, to be clearer about who we are. Last month, our theme was on becoming. And in my mind, becoming who we are with capital W. We are one with the one that created us. That's who we are. And so as we examine some of the doubts we have, perhaps we will move along this path, move forward on this journey of becoming who we're really supposed to be. And the second point I want to talk about is breaking the doubt taboo. Again, as I was a very good example of, I buried that doubt for years because I didn't know who to talk to. And so I buried it, and when you bury it, it ends up in secrecy and isolation, and these things are not healthy for our lives. There's a story in the book of Mark 9, and it's talking about this guy whose son had epilepsy. And Jesus was in town, so he thought, Jesus has been healing all these people, so he invited Jesus to his house to heal his son. And Jesus came to his house, and the guy says to him, "Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief." And boy, does that ring true to me, because sometimes that's how I feel. Yeah, I believe, but ooh, I got some questions. I got to get over this hump. And why not be honest like this guy was? Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And of course, in our circles, in the science of mind philosophy, we tend to be really positive and have these affirmations and look on the sunny side all the time. And maybe at times people are saying, you know, everybody's so cheerful and happy and they're so sure of themselves. Do I really want to introduce any questions or doubts that I have? And so I'm just saying here and now that the attitude that certainly I take toward this is compassion. I understand if you have doubts. And the nice thing about the science of mind philosophy is that, like Ernest Holmes says, be open at the top. You know, don't be afraid of learning something new or hearing something from somebody that makes some sense that might not be just orthodox in here or in Ernest Holmes' books. Well, you know, we can use common sense. We can love. We can be open to anything we might need to be learning. It is safe to speak openly, I hope, in this group. So let's not think about doubt as being taboo. Let's be willing to talk about it. And then doubt, as the third point, is doubt as a doorway to connection and reflection. And again, where I came from, it was shameful. It was not accepted to say, you know, I go to church every Sunday and I say, I know that I am a poor sinful being and Jesus had to die on the cross for me so that I wouldn't be punished eternally in hell. Every Sunday, that's what I said. Everybody said, and they still do. I'm like, I didn't believe that. And I didn't want to say anything because everybody else was saying it out loud and believed it. And, you know, every once in a while I'd maybe tiptoe into it a little bit, like, yeah, do you ever think about, and I didn't ever get any support for that. So I really learned to be, you know, stuffing that stuff down, not talking about it. And I really, there's just something very unhealthy about professing something Sunday after Sunday in front of people that you know you don't believe. And I was so timid about this whole thing that I insisted that my kids now go to the same confirmation and learn these same things that I didn't believe. And it was very difficult. It was a difficult time for me. I was a stockbroker somewhere in those years, and I'm sitting in a room with maybe 25, 30 brokers, all of them men except me and D. Ray, who used to come here, who died a couple of years ago. And there was a guy that came into our office to tell us how to sell oil and gas programs. And he did a half-day or a full-day seminar, I can't remember it. But after he was done, he holds up a Science of Mind magazine. He was from Denver. And he said, I don't want to preach to you, but he said, this magazine has really been helpful to me in setting goals and staying positive. So Dee and I decided to take a look at it. Well, I got my hands on one of these magazines and read it cover to cover, and I thought, this is what I believe. This I can embrace. It changed my life. It changed my life forever. And my spiritual life, which had been just torture for me for several years, all of a sudden I became clear because I was admitting that I did not believe what I professed to believe, but here is something I could hang my hat on. So that was certainly a doorway to connection and to reflection about what it was that I really did believe. So the thing that I want to really point out here is that this self-doubt is normal. pretty much we all have it in one area of our life or another. I had it with my spiritual life. We might have some doubts about politics, A lot of us can pound the table and say, this is the truth, I know the truth, nobody else knows the truth. We can do that, and let's face it, we do. So we can have self-doubts about that, maybe something niggling, saying, well, they might just have a point there. Just keeping an open mind. We might have self-doubts about, I had this rift with my brother-in-law 10 years ago, can't remember what it was about, but I know I was right and he was wrong. Maybe we need to re-examine, open our hearts a little bit, and take a look at if this still small voice is talking to us a little bit, and be curious and question instead of being so sure and so adamant about what it is that we determine is right. I'd like you to think for a minute about this thing we call divine doubt. What doubts or uncertainties are you hiding? You might want to think about that. Is there something within you that you maybe didn't want to say out loud or think out loud, but might be back there, that little small voice might be speaking to you? Can you recall a time that there was this in your life, that you had one of these doubts? Right now I'm thinking about Santa Claus. A lot of little kids, they're Anyway, we'll go. Anyway, we might have doubts about all kinds of things. And sometimes we have to take a good, honest look. Thank you, everyone, for pointing that out to me. So we want to think about, what is it we might be hiding? What is it we might not be wanting to look at? And what is it that we fear? Certainly I know what I feared. I feared my family would be aghast, and they were. And I kind of tiptoed into this a little bit. I didn't exactly tell them exactly what this, I just talked about positive stuff, but, eventually they figured out exactly what Science of Mind is compared to fundamental Christianity. And, I've got certain people that still, I'm sure, pray for my soul daily because they think because I don't believe about burning in hell, that certainly I will. So, I think we have to consider, what are the ramifications? Or, even to the point of you might be thinking to yourself, should I really be in this field of work that I'm in? Is this feeding my soul, or should I be doing something else? And, what ramifications might that have to your family, to your friends, to your circle that you hang with, so forth and so on. So I'm thinking, think about this a little bit. How can you face these doubts and just know that all will be well? So I'm going to say for homework this week, you might do this. Many of us, I do this. I have a place where I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for every day. And so I'm going to add to that and encourage you to add to that if you do gratitudes every day. Write down one thing that either you were unsure of or that you're unsure of today. Just write it down and then kind of let it percolate. You don't have to solve the problem right now, but I think bringing it to the light of day might be helpful. Let yourself sit in that unknown. And, we're not used to doing that, I think. That's not a favorite thing for anybody to do, to sit there and say, well, I don't really know about this, but I'm just gonna let this settle in with me for a bit and see what comes up, see where I'm led. And then when you do that, after, you might want to then take this to somebody that you trust and share it. I've been having second thoughts about this or that. I want to bounce it off you, somebody that you trust. Could be big, could be small, but it might just open your life to a bigger truth with a capital T. So these are the things that we can begin to think about, and I would, as I said, encourage you, if you don't subscribe to this, you can probably still get it at Barnes & Noble. They sell it, so it's just a good thing to have. And I'm going to end with a couple things. I'm going to end with a meditation done by Ernest Holmes after the article that he wrote in this month's magazine, and then I will close with a spiritual mind treatment. So I would invite you, if you like, to just get comfortable where you're at, just kind of settle in, and just let your thoughts kind of go and be right here, right now. These are the words of Ernest Holmes. They're a little archaic sometimes, but they are his words. So let us take as our thought for today, it is God that worketh in you. Let us see if we can realize that we have an intimate relationship with Spirit, and above everything else, let us see if we can feel the immediate presence of this life. As we listen deeply, let each say quietly, it is God that worketh in me. I am now letting go of all fear and doubt. I'm loosing it and letting it go as I affirm the presence of perfect life within me. I feel I am entering into life's harmony. I am one with its rhythm. I feel the rhythm and the pulsation of the universe flowing through me with perfect power. I am entering into a deep conviction that all is well with me and everyone else. I am entering into conscious union with others, into harmony with everything that transpires in my everyday life, and into a deep sense of gratitude for life itself. As I let go of everything that denies the goodness of life, I feel that God is giving life back to me as it actually is, in love, in harmony, and in peace. And I rejoice in this self-discovery, that I see myself not lost, but found in God. Those are Ernest's words, and I would invite you to stay in this meditative state while I close with a spiritual mind treatment or an affirmative prayer. I know there is but one power in the universe, and that power is a power of love and joy and peace and guidance and harmony, abundance, all good. I know that that very power has a perfect solution to any perceived challenge or dilemma in my life. And I know that power, that very perfect power that created everything and everyone, is also present within me. It experiences life in, through, and as me. And so with that perfect power within, I speak these loving and powerful words. Even though I sometimes have felt shame around the doubts that I've had within me. Sometimes I've tried to hide from these doubts because I'm afraid of who I might alienate, how life might change, just like those people in the cave. Even though I sometimes tried to bury my doubts, I now know my doubts give me an opportunity to explore, to learn, to find the truth involved with whatever I'm dealing with. Whether it's a political belief or a religious belief or a feeling, a problem I've had with a relative, problem that I believe that I maybe not enough to do this or that, whatever it is. Now I examine these doubts. I learn and I grow more certain of who I am. And I'm grateful that this is the way the law works. my word spoken into law, and it is done unto me as I believe. I'm grateful that that's the way it works. And I release these words now to that beneficent conspiracy to do the work. So it is.